Hey everybody, this is GGB Colts Puppers, and it's time for Puppers Pick of the Week. Oh, Puppers. Oh, that's what you think? Really? Puppers is picking the Jets to win this one. I know this is one of those rare ones where a primetime game coincides with Puppers Pick of the Week. Makes for an interesting thing to be sure. So if you do not know, it's 7:20 tonight Central, 8:20 Eastern. The Jets are traveling to Indianapolis. Yeah, it's right, Adelaide. The Jets. Yeah, she says, let's go Jets. J-E-T-S, Jets, Jets, Jets. And the Colts favored by 10.5 points this game on Fox. And if you're part of Yahoo's Fantasy Survival League, 9,900 people left. Well, one of them was my dad. 20% of people picked the Colts. Would be a big loss. So anyone who did not pick the Colts tonight, big Jets fan tonight. So if you do not know, the Jets are suffering a lot of injuries right now. If you do not know, let's just go over them real quick. Everyone knows, probably knows, anyone who's been following football at all knows that Zach Wilson was picked second overall and he's been hurt. Like, that's literally all we know about the Jets, who haven't been really following the Jets. He has a knee injury. His PCL's kind of hurt, so he's out for this game. So who's going to be starting? None other than the man that went off last week, almost threw for 400 yards, threw for something like 4 touchdowns. Actually, I think it was 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions ratio. I mean, Mike White, he ended up beating the Cincinnati Bengals of all team. The team, by the way, that just to give you, I know that you don't think the Jets beating the Bengals is that huge of an upset. Heading into that game, the Bengals were set to be the #1 seed in the AFC. Now they have a 5 seed. It shows you how good the AFC is, but it was a big loss for them. Mike White, the 2018 5th-round pick by the Cowboys out of Western Kentucky. And if you do not know, Mike White holds a special place in my heart because it was my first football game. I was watching Western Kentucky play Old Dominion, right? It was just a weekday game. I think it was like a Friday, or what was a Friday, or like maybe even a Wednesday game. It was just a game that was on. And I just started getting into football. I wasn't really watching it, but I was following my favorite teams. And I was up at my grandparents' house, and we just put on the Western Kentucky Old Dominion. Still one of the best games I've ever watched. It wasn't very great, like, play-wise. Obviously, you could tell that Mike White was something, though, watching Western Kentucky. So obviously holds a special place in my heart that Mike White was on that team. He was the quarterback. He was the first quarterback I ever watched play football, so obviously I'm going to root for him in this game. And if you don't know, Joe Flacco, is the third string 2008 first-round pick out of Delaware. Obviously did some great things with the Baltimore Ravens. Hasn't really been able to catch fire since then in Denver or New York last year, or even Philly this year. But Mike White's going to be huge. Shoulder resting on his game. The game's resting on his shoulders. Running back Tevin Coleman, if you don't know, he was a Falcon for many years. He was the Niners during their Super Bowl run. But Tevin Coleman has a hammy injury. He's out for this game. He's listed as their 3rd string back, but let's be honest, it's a pretty even split between him and Michael Carter. Michael Carter being the 2021 4th-round pick out of UNC. But backing him up now is Ty Johnson. You don't know, remember, if you didn't watch the Bengals game, I actually would think you guys should go back and watch the Bengals-Jets highlights. It was a phenomenal game. But Ty Johnson made a big play in the 4th quarter catching the ball. I expect him to be used a lot in that regard today. With no Tevin Coleman, they got it. It's not just the Michael Carter show. This is more of like a running back by committee thing. And then obviously Michael P. Ryan steps into Ty Johnson's role without Tevin Coleman around, Michael P. Ryan being the 2020 4th-round pick out of Florida. Corey Davis has a hip injury. He did not practice, so he's doubtful for this game. If you're not, everyone moves up a spot. Everyone knows Jamison Crowder, and he was following football for a reasonable amount of time. 2015 4th-round pick out of Duke from the Redskins, signed with New York when they were supposed to be really good with Sam Darnold. But he's a really good player. And you have Elijah Moore, the 2021 2nd-round pick out of Ole Miss, rookie. Obviously, Elijah Moore's most famous play is pretending to be a peeing dog and losing the Egg Bowl because of it, but he's actually a phenomenal receiver. I'm looking forward to seeing them use him more. Keelan Cole Sr., 6-year player out of Kentucky Wesleyan. By the way, did catch that touchdown pass. I don't know how the heck that was overturned. It literally the most touchdown pass of all time. It was easily caught, easily in bounds. Really stupid. That man deserved that touchdown. If you don't, go back and watch the game. A one-handed touchdown grab that somehow overturned. Don't get it. But Keelan Cole's been playing pretty well this year with the Jets, honestly. And then Denzel Mims, kind of been a disappointment, with a 2020 second-round pick out of Baylor. I expect him to get more involved this game. Then you got Braxton Berrios, who is a good player in his own right. He's useful. 2018 second-round pick out of Miami. And then you have Jeff Smith, the third-year player out of Boston College. Jeff Smith, don't expect to see him much this game. Then you have some offensive tackle injuries. Mekhi Becton's obviously the big one. He is supposed to return for this week. We'll see if that actually holds true. He had a knee MCL injury. He was put on IR until week 9. Also, Connor McDermott, who was a backup offensive tackle. Once Mekhi Becton got hurt, he is set to return for this week too, with also a knee injury. George Fant, who has been starting since Mekhi Becton got hurt. Actually, he was starting before that. I think Morgan Moses. Actually, I think George Fant is a starter on the roster regardless. Ankle injury, limited practice, so he's questionable for this game. And Parker Ferguson is an undisclosed injury, but he's on IR. I bet that's it till the end of the year 1. So what we're really watching here is Mekhi Becton. If all three don't play, if Mekhi Becton, Connor McDermott, and George Fant all don't play, we're going to be resting it all on Chuma Edoga, who's the only other offensive tackle on the roster, the 2019 third-round pick out of USC, so we're going to be interested to see that. And then if you don't know, the Jets recently traded for Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, who was a crucial part of that Chiefs Super Bowl run. He has a personal thing, so he's going to be out for this game. He wasn't going to start anyways. Greg Van Roten has that right guard spot locked up. But he was key depth, so if Greg Van Roten, I think, goes down with an injury, it's likely going to be Dan Feeney, the 2017 third-round pick out of Indiana. So then defensive end injuries. I told you, Jets have a lot of injuries. They're not doing great this year. They have some serious injuries. Kyle Phillips has an ankle injury. He's supposed to be returning this week. We'll see how that comes through. Carl Lawson has an Achilles injury. He's on IR, and Achilles normally out for the season, so likely we don't see Carl Lawson for the rest of the year. Bryce Huff has a back injury. He's going to be out for this game, and Vinny Curry has an illness, also not going to be eligible for this game. So the big hope is if Kyle Phillips comes back, that would be nice for them. But if not, you have 3 pass rushers on your roster that are healthy. John Franklin Myers, the 2018 fourth-round pick out of SF Austin. He has been phenomenal this year. I really think John Franklin Myers is coming into his own. Tim Ward, third-year player out of Old Dominion. He was with the Chiefs for many years, so he's going to be a key depth person to them. And Shaq Lawson, they traded with the Texans for him at the beginning of the year, 2018 first-round pick out of Clemson. So we'll see if Shaq Lawson can come into his own and replace Bryce Huff on that other pass-rushing edge. Then linebacker-wise, we have 3 linebacker injuries for the Jets. Blake Cashman has a groin injury. He's on IR till week 11. Hamzah Nasirline, I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce that right. He has an undisclosed injury, but he's supposed to be on IR. He's supposed to come back this week, so we'll see if that comes through. And Jamie Sherwood has an Achilles injury out for the year. So if Hamzah Nasirline, doesn't come back from his undisclosed injury, we're going to have, obviously, all 3 starting linebackers are still healthy, which is an amazing thing. Delshon Phillips, third-year player out of Illinois, starts on the weak side, I think, and then middle is C.J. Mosley, obviously the 2014 first-round pick out of Alabama, big signing when they signed him, and then Quincy Williams, 2019 third-round pick out of Murray State. All those are the starters, and then backup is Jared Davis. He's going to provide some key depth because he's the only healthy backup linebacker. So he's a 2017 first-round pick out of Florida, if you didn't know. And then the other injuries we've had in the defensive backfield, we have safety LaMarcus Joyner and Zane Lewis. Both have probably season-ending injuries, and LaMarcus Joyner has a tricep, so he's on IR, and Zane Lewis is knee MCL. He's on IR as well. So Ashton Davis is set to be the strong safety, I think. Ashton Davis, if you did not know, was a player. When I was watching the Jets last year, I was very high on the 2020 third-round pick out of Cal. I was like one of my favorite players in the draft. He played phenomenally well last year. He's a big hitter. I'm excited to see, now that he has the starting gig, what he's going to be able to do with it, especially it's going to be one of his first primetime games. I think his last primetime game was the game against the Broncos last year. Jared Wilson, seventh-year player out of Michigan. It's going to be the backup for him, thanks to the LaMarcus Joyner injury. Then Marcus May, obviously, a player everyone knows, really one of the Jets' better defensive players. starting 2017 second-round pick out of Florida. And then Sharon Niesman, 7th-year player out of FAU, is going to be backing him up. So if you don't know, the only positions they don't really have significant injuries at is defensive tackle, where none of them are hurt. Thank God, knock on wood. And corner, where none of them are hurt. But serious issues on defensive end, linebacker, and safety really hurting there. And then obviously, at the beginning of the year, Braden Mann went down with a knee injury. He's supposed to return this week, so we'll see if that also comes to fruition. If not, Thomas Morstead. If your starting punter is going to go down, you might as well sign one of the best punters to have ever done it in Thomas Morstead. 2009 5th-round pick at SMU. If you did not know, he was a Saint for many years. One of the best Saints punters of all time. Phenomenal punter. And, if you're going to have your guy get hurt, you might as well have it. Sign one of the best to ever do it. The Colts have some serious injuries on the wide receiver front of things. T.Y. Hilton has a concussion. He's going to be out for this game. Paris Campbell has a foot injury. He's on IR till at least week 15. Courtney Davis is hurt. Desmond Patman has a foot injury on IR until this week, so we'll see if Patman comes back this week. If all the injuries hold up like they are, the only question mark is Desmond Patman's going to come back. Michael Pittman, obviously, he's the number 1 receiver anyways. He's going to stay this number 1 receiver, 2020 second-round pick out of, I believe, USC. He's been phenomenal this year. The real interesting question is, without T.Y. Hilton and Paris Campbell, who's going to step up? Zach Pascal's got to be that player, 5th-year player out of Old Dominion. We'll see if he's going to be able to step it up. Ashton Doolin is suddenly slussed into a number 3 role, 4th-year player out of Malone. And then you got Mike Strahan, the 2021 7th-round pick out of Charleston, who has been way better than I expected him to be. But Carson Wentz really has got to be good this game, with Michael Pittman being the only real threat and Zach Pascal being a decent player, but definitely nowhere near as good as you would love to have T.Y. Hilton and Paris Campbell for this game. And then left guard Quentin Nelson has a toe injury at a limited practice, so he's questionable for this game. If not, Chris Reed, the 7th-year player out of Minnesota State, Moorhead, will be being that left guard. Not ideal, obviously. You would love to have Quentin Nelson, one of the best left guards in the game, healthy for this game. And then the only other injuries they really have is at safety. Kari Willis has a calf injury, is out for this game. T.J. Carey has an undisclosed injury. Supposed to return this week. We'll see if that happens. And then Julian Blackman has an Achilles, which is a year-ending injury. Which means with no Kari Willis, and if T.J. Carey does not return, George Odom is set to make the start at strong safety, I believe. 5th-year player out of Central Arkansas. We'll see if that comes to fruition if T.J. Carey doesn't come back this week. Andrew Sendejo, 12th-year player out of Rice, obviously has been really good in his time everywhere he's gone, so obviously who you're going to have to rely on. And then number 2 is going to be that depth piece that if one of those two gets hurt, or if they if they have an extra safety on the field, Josh Jones, 2017 second-round pick out of NC State. And then the only other injury for the Colts is kicker Rodrigo Blankenship. He has a hip injury. He's on IR until this week. We'll see if he comes back. But if not, Michael Badgley, the Money Badger, 5th-year player out of Miami, is going to be kicking those field goals. So what does GGB think about this game? Obviously, the Jets are dealing with some serious injuries, but, it's nothing new. Outside of the George Fant injury, none of the stuff is new news. Corey Davis was healthy, I think, last game for a little bit of it, but Mike White was able to win without Kevin Coleman. He was able to win without Mekhi Becton and Connor McDermott. These injuries are not new ones. Outside of, I think, Bryce Huff, none of these injuries are all that new. And George Fant. Outside of George Fant and George Fant, Bryce Huff, and Corey Davis, none of these injuries are all that new for the Jets, right? They've been able to survive without these players anyways. And now, obviously, losing George Fant would be huge because, I think, honestly, the Jets had better line depth than I thought at the beginning of the year. Obviously, would love to have either Mekhi Becton back or Connor McDermott or have George Fant. You would obviously not ideally start Chuma Edoga at that spot. But that's really the only injury I'm not that worried about. I think the receiver depth for the Jets is actually way better than it's been made out all year. I love Jamison Crowder. He's one of my favorite receivers in the league. I love Elijah Moore coming out of Ole Miss. I love Denzel Mims. I love his potential. And then Keelan Cole and Braxton Berrios have way overperformed what I thought was possible at the beginning of the year. Not to mention, you still have some reliable tight end options. on your team. None of them are going to wow you, but you have some reliable ones there. Obviously, you need to get the ground game going to help out Mike White. It's going to be interesting, though. The Colts are a team that's like a fringe. They need this game. This is like a must-win game for them after losing against Tennessee last week. Tennessee, not exactly... I mean, they have the games there, but Derrick Henry, that's like for any other team losing your starting quarterback, a star quarterback. You lose they lost their best player. I mean, if Indy has ever had an opportunity to strike and get themselves a playoff berth, it's now, but this is a must-win game for them, so it's going to be interesting. I think the Jets are going to end up covering this 10.5 point spread. I think Mike White proves this isn't an anomaly. I love Mike White coming out of college. He was one of my favorite, most underrated players. I thought that he was really going to stick with Dallas as their backup, but, you know, they really like Cooper Rush for some odd reason. But I really like what Indy is doing with their team, and I think they're going to survive here. But I think New York is definitely getting better with Mike White on the field instead of Zach Wilson. I think there's going to be quarterback competition coming up here. Pick the Colts, though. Everybody, this is GGB Colts Puppers saying adios, amigos.